And I'm just gonna thank you for joining. Hi, Drew.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you.
Great. Nice to meet you too. Thanks for joining. Hi, Haneen. Great to meet you
Hi,
as well.
everyone. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Very well, very well. Excited to have you all here. We were just Vinod and I were just catching up and chatting. We're starting to let people in. We're going to give a few minutes for folks to join. But in the meantime, if either of you are sharing screen, I'm going to just make you a co-host so you have that permission. Drew, will you be the one sharing your screen?
Yes, I will be sharing my screen.
Okay, let me just. Perfect. And everyone else, thanks for joining. We're going to give a couple of minutes for folks to join and then get started. Thanks for being here. Okay. And as people are joining in, especially for folks from the Little Big Fun community, if you want to take a second to just introduce yourself on the chat, maybe just type in where you're calling in from and maybe just a quick sentence about the work you're doing. I know that a lot of you are working in education or related to education, so this is going to be an interesting conversation. So maybe you can give our guests a chance to learn more about what you do. So just feel free to type it in the chat and put in with your location as well. Okay, I think we're gonna kick it off because we want to make the most of our time together. And Vinod, Drew, and Haneen, they've brought some wealth of knowledge to share with this community. It's also being recorded because of a few people were not able to make it to the session, so we're gonna also share it with them. But it is such an honor to invite the team from Learning Upgrade to join us today for this, what we call our learning session. And so really excited for the conversation. The format for this session will be that, we'll have a short PowerPoint presentation from the team at Learning Upgrade, followed by some open space to ask questions and learn more about the program. There is also an opportunity to be part of something exciting that this team is building. And so maybe there's an opportunity for some of you. I'm already seeing some of the introductions in the chat and seeing some kind of, synergies around collaboration. So there might be some space at the end to also discuss that and put up your question. We've scheduled an hour for this, and so we'll try to make the most of it by really passing it to the experts in the room. So, Vinod, if you want to kick it off with maybe an introduction to yourself, and then maybe introduce the rest of your team, and then you can kick it off with the presentation. And thank you once again for making your time and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Abhinav, for having us. It's a pleasure to meet all of you and have this opportunity. I'm Vinod Lobo. I'm the founder and CEO of Learning Upgrade. My family started Learning Upgrade 25 years ago. We just had our 25th anniversary. So 3 million students now, children and adults, have been through Learning Upgrade around the world. We're in 25 countries now, mostly working with small organizations like yours to help children and adults, refugees, migrants, people in poverty, women and girls lacking access to education. And so it's really exciting to talk to all of you. We have a small enough group, so feel free to unmute your mic if you have a question or just join the conversation. It's a small group. We want to be as informal as we can. Drew Robinson, he's in Los Angeles. He's been working with programs all over the world. He's going to start off by just telling you what Learning Upgrade is and some basics. Haneen is going to be talking about deployments that we have in Africa, a bunch of different countries in Africa, and also deployments in the United States with refugees. And we're going to open it up and just have a discussion and conversation, hear about all your programs and what you want to do and answer your questions. I'll just give you a little background. The mission of Learning Upgrade is to help people to learn so that they can improve their lives. Our mission is to help people for whom other things are not working. They don't have access. There are barriers to education, and we can provide that. Sometimes it's for improving jobs, access. Sometimes it's for helping children to get into higher secondary education and college. And sometimes it's for refugees to get repatriated to another country. There's so many different reasons for that education. But what we want to do is make access universal and help organizations to teach their clients. So I'll let Drew take over and give you an overview, and then we'll have Haneen come on and tell you some stories.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Vinod. Absolutely. So what I'll do is I'm just going to give a brief introduction on Learning Upgrade. And so when we say Learning Upgrade, it really is 3 parts. And so what I'm going to focus on right now is the student app. And that's what Vinod was mentioning, is we teach English, math, and job skills in an app. And we say app, but it is available on the web as well. So iOS, Android, or a web-enabled browser, and learners will have full access. What we won't be doing a deep dive on today, just an overview, is the learning management system. And so that's kind of how you onboard students and track and monitor their progress. And then the third component of Learning Upgrade is free to start. And so every single program that would like to get started with Learning Upgrade, we offer full pilots, as many students as you'd like to start with, full training for all staff, and we make it as easy as possible to get started. It's essentially just saying yes, and then we'll take it from there and help everybody bring Learning Upgrade to their program. So get started with the slides here. So as Vinod mentioned, our focus is always, how do we empower every organization around the globe to deliver life-changing education? And this is one of those pain points that we hear from a lot of the organizations we work with, is they're traditionally providing other services, and they find that traditional models of education are difficult to scale. So whether that means building schools, hiring credentialed staff, finding educators, providing print materials, is they're able to do that at a small scale, but the communities they want to reach are much larger. And so how do we find tools and solutions to scale up to meet the needs of every learner in our community? And that's where Learning Upgrade comes in. Being based, purely on an app, we provide a full standards-based education that meets the federal standards here, and then also aligned to CEFR, so that common European framework, and a proven solution that can take any student. And so that means pre-literate, first exposure to English, first time looking at the English alphabet, all the way up to full proficiency. And that's critical, because you'll find a lot of the programs that you'll maybe look at outside of Learning Upgrade, they're really good at taking students that have already been through pre-literacy up to reading, and say, okay, now we're going to take them up to the next level where they can really accelerate into some college kind of courses. But there are very few programs that are going to work for every student you work with. So regardless of what their starting point is, we'll give them a pre-test, find out exactly where they are on their journey, get them enrolled in the appropriate course, and then in a self-paced environment, they'll be able to move all the way up to full proficiency. So here are the three parts I talked about. And so, what's really at the core of our breakthrough app is we use songs, video, and games to teach. And so it really is engagement. You'll talk to any educator and they'll tell you really it's time on task. How much time can we get them in the classroom? How much time can we get them working at home, studying? And so with Learning Upgrade, we take care of that in the app as we make it really fun, really engaging. And that's what we call binge learning, where learners are logging into the app at night instead of social media and logging 3 and 4 hours between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's going to drive that 4x learning speed. Our LMS makes things super easy. And so minimum, we have volunteers that are managing 50 students. Some we have volunteered. Again, these are non-credentialed educators. They're more facilitators. And some of our deployments managing 250 to 500. And so our LMS just makes things super easy to get started and incredibly easy to maintain the license. And then all of you, again, will be able to get started. So minimum, we see 10x improvement there. So take the number of learners you're currently able to serve, multiply it by 10 or more, and that's just the reach of the program when you're leveraging Learning Upgrade to help. So a little bit our business card. So Vinod mentioned we've served over 3 million students now. We're also the grand prize winners of the Adult Literacy X Prize. So this was the largest field test ever done in adult education. And so it was a $7 million prize put on by the Barbara Bush Foundation and Dollar General. And they said, hey, if anybody can create an app that'll get measurable gains in adult ed, we're going to have this multi-year prize. They used CASAS, which is a states-based assessment that they use in adult education as the pre and post test, 12,000 students. And so at the end, we were declared the grand prize winner there. But it's, even though that was adult ed, it's a global solution for all ages. And so we still work in K-12 for our current deployments. We're doing one in Rwanda, one in Zambia, and those are elementary age students, some secondary, some college prep. We also work K-12 in the States. And so we have a nice balance where it's a solution for all ages and for 2Gen, where we have children working in the house as well as the parents, and they can all support each other. So, what makes Learning Upgrade different from a Duolingo, Rosetta Stone, Babbel, and those other programs? They're great for language acquisition. You're learning a few phrases, learning a few words, but they're not going to get you ready for academic English. They're not going to get you ready for academic math because they don't have math, and they definitely don't have any job skills. So with Learning Upgrade, with one app, you're going to get the academic English, you're going to get the academic math all the way from basic numeracy all the way to algebra. And then we have our digital literacy, financial literacy, and our most popular new course, which is the work life skills. Okay, so here's a look at our recent deployments. And so this is all in the last year. We have been around for 25 years, but in the last few years, we've really been growing globally. And so as Vinod mentioned, Haneen's going to tell you about our deployment in Liberia, how that's starting to grow into Cote d'Ivoire. And then the ones I've been working with in Zambia, as well as Rwanda, and then some other ones in Kenya. So Haneen will be talking about these deployments, kind of how they get started and what they're working on. And then we'll be able to field some questions if you'd like to see how Learning Upgrade would work where you are. But before we do that, I just want to do a brief story about Learning Upgrade at the individual level, and then also at the site-wide level. And so at the individual level, we work with the UMI Learning Center and Somali Bantu Association here in Southern California and San Diego, and supporting the K-12 students, but also the parents. So here Studio wanted to really help her kids do better in school, but also for herself to improve her English as a new arrival. So you can imagine with 7 children, managing 7 kids, it's really difficult to take advantage of the traditional pathways of education. Community colleges, adult schools. For reasons of time, it's not possible. For reasons of transportation, it's just not going to happen. And so with Learning Upgrade, she was able to get started, take our pre-test, and begin her journey at the very beginning for both English and math, and then worked all the way through. It was logging tons of hours late at night. and in 18 months was able to get through everything to where she's now able to take credit-bearing courses at the local community college. So this is a journey in traditional adult ed, which is, talking one grade level per year, a minimum of 5 years. But when you're able to take, an app, and it's really just now, how much time on task can I manage myself? This is for every student's going to be different. For highly motivated students like Studio, it's sometimes 5, 6, 10 hours a day. And this journey is not a small journey. This is over 200 hours of work in the app. But because it was up to her, it was her agency, her drive that was able to push her through. Again, with the binge learning, a highly engaging app that helps, but she was able to get all the way through and is now taking the credit-bearing courses at a community college. So I just have a very brief video. It's about a minute here, so you can hear from one of the instructors there and how Learning Upgrade is used with the students, and some of the feedback from an ESL instructor. So before I do that, let me make sure I have the sound enabled. Okay.
Hello, my name is Shadia Mahmoud. I teach ESL here at OMI Learning Center. What's very amazing about this program is it really helps them love to learn. It just makes it fun and just more enjoyable. I think it's a great addition to add into our program. We have seen tremendous improvements. They started from basically doing the alphabets to now where they're reading paragraphs and reading sentence and completed sentence. So that's pretty amazing. Hello. Hi,
Okay, so that was at the individual level, and now we'll talk about one of the deployments I work with, which is with Focus Humanitarian Assistance. And so they reached out to us about 2 years ago, really in the center of COVID shutdowns, and they were trying to find ways that they could teach the increase in Afghan refugees that they were working with. Due to the Taliban taking back over, there was a large increase in refugees that they were supporting in neighboring countries. And because of COVID, they couldn't fly their volunteers from Canada into the countries of need. And so, number one, their program that they were using wasn't scalable. It was very expensive and it wasn't working. So we put together a pilot. We translated all of our onboarding documentation into Dari, and we sent out a little message on WhatsApp, hoping to recruit about 50 to 70 students to get started. That video and the message was shared with everybody. And before we knew it, we had a pilot with 800 students, which is exciting, but not always ideal when you're managing, first pilot, let's do 800 students. But we made it work. And after the 800 students got onboarded, 6 months later, we were working with 2,000. And currently we're working with about 6,000 or 7,000. And they're continually expanding into other countries. So it's been a fantastic solution for them. And the reason for that is that it enables their volunteers, who are all based in Canada, to remotely onboard as many learners as they need. So again, we make things super simple on the onboarding front. Sometimes there'll be a new deployment we did for students in India. They wanted to onboard about 500 new learners. So they had the spreadsheet of their names. I'm here in LA. Volunteer Nabil was in Toronto. And in about 10 minutes, we have all the students onboarded. And then we do push notifications in Dari to their WhatsApp numbers. So they're able to get the download app link on their WhatsApp. They have their credentials. Everybody started. And then we just sit back and watch them log in, see how they're doing on the assessment, and then how they're doing as they begin their journey. But in the first 6 months, you can see the 2,000 students, 44,000 hours, but most importantly, there is the 12,000 certificates. And so for every Learning Upgrade course, it's a 60 lesson course, full grade level of academic content. And so 12,000 were completed in the first 6 months. And then one of the most important things that came out of this is we came up with this high flyer program. And so every single one of these refugees that went through all of the Learning Upgrade English, they became the volunteers and mentors for the next group. So we run it on a quarterly cohort group, and then the high flyers from each group get to then be instructors for the next group of refugees. And in some cases, we actually have refugees that were in Turkey that are becoming the volunteers and instructors for refugees that are currently in Syria. And some are even taking on a teacher role where they're going through some teacher training and getting some form of credential to become actual instructors. And so here's why it was important in that first 6 months. They wanted to see how Learning Upgrade worked. And so they used CEFR for the assessment. Here in the States, we tend to use CASAS, and then we have NRS, the standard NRS, and then NRS ESL. So you can see that there if that's what you're more familiar with. But the first group, naturally, when we take our pre-test, first exposure to English. So 92% of that pre-A1, really have no formal education with English instruction. But after 6 months of Learning Upgrade, that group is down to 16%. And of that 16%, those were just the refugees that couldn't get started, whether that was device connectivity or, for a refugee, just a lot of other things going on. But essentially, any single student that got started with Learning Upgrade moved up from pre-A1 into basic. So that's the A1, A2. And then a large group is now in the B1, B2 independent. And that's critical for Focus Humanitarian Assistance because they have incredible vocational training. And so that's taking a student that's proficient in English and math and then getting them ready for jobs and getting them ready to come to Canada. Their challenge is they just didn't have enough refugees that were ready for that vocational training. So what we're doing is we're taking every single refugee and getting them ready. And that's going to really optimize the outcomes for every single one of those learners. So now that we've kind of talked about outcomes, I'll just briefly cover the app. So this is what it's going to look like as the students take their pre-test. The very first time they log in, they won't see the courses. It'll say English placement or math placement. They'll take the assessment, and then they're going to get placed somewhere in this English track. So we have 6 English courses here from basic up to 5. Each one of these courses is 60 lessons. 1 through 59 are going to be the instruction. And then each one of these courses has lesson 60, which is a cumulative test of everything they've learned. So you'll see here that they all have gold around them. So they earn these certificates that we talked about for Focus when they finish all 60 lessons. Gold means they got every lesson above 95%, silver is 90, and then bronze is 75. And they're going to get that for each one of the lessons as well. Every single one of the lessons starts out with instructions. So a narrator comes on and they're going to walk them through the instruction for the lesson. And then the engagement kicks in and we teach everything in the form of a song. So they have very brief instruction, then they get a song, and then they have the gamification where they answer practice questions based on the instruction that they just received. And what really separates us from pretty much every other form of instruction that's not going to be synchronous with a teacher is that we record over 10,000 pieces of audio for every single one of these courses. And that way in the gamification, when they're answering a practice question and they do get it incorrect, we don't just skip to the next one. A voice comes on and walks them through exactly how to answer it correctly. We also have all the visual components. So we have arrows, we have drag and drop, we have highlights, and it really is a teacher built into the app. We can walk them through exactly how to answer it correctly. And then most importantly, we can scale things back and give them an easier question. They build up their skills and their confidence until they can get back to one like the one they got incorrect and continue their progress from there. So for those that are interested, we do have full lesson lists. So you can see the lesson list as well as some of our alignments. So here in the States, we have college and career readiness. For those that are more interested in the CEFR scales, we have those as well. And so we'd be more than happy to share those. But really at the core, it's like we look at how students are spending their time on their smartphones. So most of it now is going to be communication, so WhatsApp or other messaging apps, or it's going to be social media. And so that's going to be things like TikTok or Instagram, YouTube, and everything that we're consuming and that they're consuming is bite-sized. Rarely do students go on and, hey, I want to find a recipe. Let me see the 60-minute video. Like that was 20 years ago. Now you want to see something in 3 to 5 minutes. You want to find something bite-sized, something you can very quickly digest and then have a chance to practice yourself. So that's Learning Upgrade in a nutshell. As our instruction is bite-sized, we want it catchy. We teach them in the form of a song. We want to grab their attention. And then once they do that, then they get to practice. And that's the practice questions. That's what really drives the binge learning and why learners are logging in for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And it's very similar to what you find on social media is, each piece of content usually doesn't take you more than 30 seconds to consume, but you spend way more time on the app than you would if they threw something at you that was 30 minutes. And so here's a brief look at the courses. So we have the instruction, that's top right and bottom left. And again, it's not a workbook. It comes to life. We can highlight, we can animate, we can really bring things to the student's attention. And again, all of this is done with a narrator and then also condensed into a song. And in the bottom right, you're going to see what some of the gameplay looks like. This is volume of a rectangular prism. And so the very first thing they're going to do is take a look at the prism, and the narrator is going to walk them through. Then they're going to fill out their formula. They're going to drag and drop the length, width, height, and then the volume. Instantly, when they click go, red is going to display what was incorrect. They're going to see the formula on the right here, and the narrator is going to walk them through exactly how to answer it correctly. And so, looks like my video doesn't want to play here. Okay. So that's everything I wanted to cover. Wanted to pass things off maybe to Haneen here, and we can talk about how we get Learning Upgrade into programs and what that looks like for our deployments. But maybe before we do, are there any questions from anybody? Again, you can use the chat or you can just unmute if you have any questions on the student app side of things. No? All right, Haneen.
All right, Drew, you did a great job, apparently. No questions. I'm just kidding. Hi, everyone. I'm Haneen. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for being here. I am happy to share more about how we have partnered with organizations all over the world in so many different forms and fashion. Every partner we partner with, the deployment ends up looking a little bit differently than the last deployment we've done. So I'll go through a couple examples. And so the first one that I would like to talk about is our work in Liberia right now. So we initially partnered with an organization called Foundation for Women, and they're the largest microfinance provider in the country of Liberia for the last 15 years. So they work with thousands of mostly women, but also it's like the entire family system, because if you fund a female in the household, they end up giving it back into the family. So they have been a very well-established organization in Liberia. They have all these trusting relationships with many other organizations and government officials, and just the general population sees them and they know that their work is really great. So that's been kind of like our ideal partner, someone who has this very well-established world in the place that we're working with them in. So we started a pilot with 8 different groups in Liberia because we wanted to test out different environments of communities. So for example, we started with the microfinance group. So people that they'd already served in some capacity became a part of our Learning Upgrade deployment. Then we also brought in a couple church groups. So we partnered with a couple churches in Monrovia, high profiles. A lot of trust is in that type of system. So people are going to the church multiple times a week, and they are, if someone is going to share a resource to them in that community, they're really bought in and they're excited and they jump right in. We also worked with some health clinic workers. So many health clinic workers have gone through formal education, but sometimes they've had to cut it short and start working instead. So we really wanted them to have an opportunity to be part of the Learning Upgrade pilot as well, and kind of test in that employer setting where maybe they might have access to Wi-Fi at their workplace, and maybe they'll stay like an hour or two later and use that Wi-Fi so they can learn on Learning Upgrade. So we tried to mesh as many different communities together into this pilot and test what that would look like. And what we found was people were ready and excited to learn. And our biggest challenge was around the cost of mobile data. So when people would leave, a school or their employment place, they would have to pay for their own mobile data. And in Liberia in particular, the cost of data is astronomical. So it's incredibly expensive there. I know it's expensive in many places, but specifically Liberia has an incredibly high cost for mobile data. So what we started to brainstorm with Foundation for Women was how can we solve for this? So one solve was let's buy some MiFi devices, those portable Wi-Fi devices. Let's set them up in a couple of the churches and allow people to come in at their own time and learn. That was helpful to a certain extent, but also like we know we want people to be able to use their own phones at their own homes at their own time when it's convenient for them. So then we started talking with some of the mobile learning or the mobile providers. So Orange, MTN. Orange is the largest provider in Liberia. So we are now partnered with them and we're trying to set up Learning Upgrade in such a way where it'll be free for the end user. So we pool the data that's being used on the back end, we pay Orange directly for that, and then the user never has to ever think about paying for using the app. In the meantime, but while we set up that technical integration, we're going to send out free data to people monthly in a pilot to see if they receive free data, are they going to use Learning Upgrade for that? So really part of our process is let's start a pilot, let's learn about the environment that you're working in, let's learn about the people you're serving, and let's customize the way we deploy based on that population that we're working with. At the same time, we're trying to expand our work in Liberia, so finding more partners that are interested who might serve different types of populations. So for example, we're working with the Liberia Refugee Resettlement and Repatriation Commission. So they're funded by UNHCR. They've helped both Liberian refugees get resettled back into Liberia after the war, but also some third country nationals, like people from like Ivorians from Ivory Coast, people from Mali. They have a lot of refugees they're serving in Liberia. So we're about to deploy with them with about 5,000, over 5,000 refugees across Liberia to bring Learning Upgrade to them, which is going to be very exciting because part of their program was French instruction for the Ivorians, and now they're integrating them into the English language curriculum. So Learning Upgrade will play a key role in getting the French speakers upskilled in English enough to join those English curriculum schools. So that's just one deployment we've had, which is all of Liberia. We're trying to keep expanding there. We learned so much. Another example is with an organization called Rescuing. So they serve women and girls who are incredibly at risk in many different forms. And they bring many, many different types of resources to those women and girls all over the world. So we're doing a pilot with them in 5 countries. We're in Kenya at the Kakuma refugee camp. We're in Ghana, we're in Nigeria, in Nepal, and Afghanistan. I wanted to share a couple stories about the Afghanistan group. So this is a group of 40 people who are in Afghanistan currently, and almost all of them are women who have been told that they can no longer go to school. So this program has been a lifeline for them. Like they've been so passionate about continuing their education and taking it into their own hands. And so that's been like a very beautiful process to watch. All the people on the WhatsApp group community that we've created, they're sharing resources, they're sharing stories, they're sharing their certificates that they're earning, and everyone is just celebrating them in this online community that they've created. So that's another example. And then one that's more local in the US, we're working with an organization called Honor the Promise. So they're a group that has brought together resources for Afghan special force operators who were evacuated in August of 2021 because of their role helping the US government. So after the fall, they were very at risk. And when they were resettled in the US, many of them did not speak English. So we are bringing Learning Upgrade to them as a resource to help upskill in English, math, but also the job skills courses that we mentioned earlier. So like the digital literacy, the financial literacy, the life skills, So really trying to get them prepped and more comfortable integrating into the US society. So that's another example, but I'll hand it over back to Drew for more stories.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Anine. Just pause and again, if there's any questions or if you'd like any more details or insights, or we'd be more than happy to answer those. Otherwise, I can just briefly cover what the student onboarding looks like. So, if you're going to get started with the pilot, what does that entail? And then how do we go from there? But just, briefly pause, or, if you know how to use the reactions, you can always, do a hand raise there and we can call from there. But if there's no other questions, I can just get into the student onboarding.
I'm going to jump in real quick with a couple of quick questions, which might help also clarify before the onboarding, because it's fascinating. And thank you also for this context. And Haneen, the stories you told were really powerful, I think, to see the quick reaction also of the work that you're doing and the impact it has. With the language, I know there are a couple of folks here who work in French-speaking countries, and I was curious if eventually the goal is also for some of the language, like course offerings, to be in different languages, or is English kind of the primary like curriculum? Would that be too complicated for different languages to be incorporated?
Yeah, I can answer that. So right now we have captions in our programs in Spanish and in Arabic. We're going to be adding some more. We have onboarding in 10 different languages. So, onboarding, meaning, the instructions to get going, to move in, are in 10 different languages. So right now, we can accommodate people learning in, starting out in different languages. But the primary instruction, especially with the 10,000 pieces of audio per course, are in English. So it is our goal eventually to be also teaching people to read in Spanish, for example, and other things. But right now, we do have the captions in Spanish, but the teaching itself in terms of the audio is in English.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering that. And yeah, I just also realized we have someone here who works in a Spanish-speaking country, so this might be actually quite interesting to connect with them. Second question, this is my last question for now. The certificates that you are, like when people finish these courses, they get these certificates. Are you partnering with local institutions to make that a accredited certification? In some countries, to get a job, you need to have like a local school certificate of sort. And is that something that you're already doing in some of your pilots, or something in books for future?
I think it's in the books for the future. I think it's been done though on some scale in different ways. That means people have shown certificates in order to try to get jobs, and people have used their certificates to to demonstrate what they have learned. But I think, yes, the future is micro-credentials and collaborating with organizations and getting credit for all this work. But what a lot of people do after using Learning Upgrade is take some test that they need to take for a diploma, for college, for job training. And I think we had a question from Sarah. So Sarah, you can unmute and go ahead.
Yes, hello. Well, my question is regarding the app. Basically, when the students download the app for them to access the content, do they have to have like a stable internet connection, or can they access the content without internet connection?
They do need an internet connection. It's not super high bandwidth. So we haven't had much issue. We've done a lot of deployments around the world. So sometimes it can be done with mobile data, sometimes with Wi-Fi, sometimes going to Wi-Fi centers. There's different solutions, but yeah, they do need a data connection. It doesn't have to be super high bandwidth, but they do need a data connection in order to complete the lessons. Yes.
Thank you.
And luckily, Starlink is starting to expand. I just talked to my buddy Josh, who's in Haiti, and so they've been wanting to get started for a while, and they just got Starlink set up this week. And so he's
Wow.
like, hey, let's do a Starlink in Haiti pilot. And so that'll be fun to see how that works out.
Yes, and what Drew and Haneen will tell you along with me in my experiences is that there's a few areas in rural Africa where data is very, very, very difficult. What we've generally found in Asia and in Central America and South America is less issues, people having a better experience finding the data. But as Haneen said, each deployment's a little different. And so, I saw that, for example, I think it's Natendi in Uganda, is working with computer labs. And Drew has had a lot of success working with AEP and others in Africa who are using computer labs in conjunction with phones. Drew, can you tell a little bit about some of that?
Sure. Yeah. So in both deployments, so for Sheer Love Rwanda and then African Education Program in Zambia, both are utilizing the computer labs that they have at their instruction centers. So for African Education Program, they work with existing centers. So one's called Amos Youth Center, and traditionally they were there to provide support and mentorship for students, and then also grant-based funding, just to ensure that they were able to go to school. They're having a huge improvement where the government has provided funding now for students to go to school, I believe from K-12. And so it's really allowed all of their centers to kind of pivot to an after-school program model where, okay, K-8's free, but a lot of these students haven't been in school starting in kindergarten, which is what you would expect. Maybe they're in 3rd or 4th grade. This is their first year of traditional education. So with Learning Upgrade, they're able to go to the computer labs, and then instead of trying to figure it out on the fly in the classroom, they're able to log, some of them doing 60 to 90 minutes a week on Learning Upgrade, really building up their foundational skills and then preparing themselves for this new pathway for state school. And then same thing with Sheer Love Rwanda, is these are students that are either not in school at all or have spent time on the streets. And so that's really the focus of Sheer Love, is they're working almost primarily with students and individuals that have no parents, no family structure, from the streets, then providing grants for housing, but most importantly, Learning Upgrade is their pathway to education. And all of this is done with computer labs, older devices. I think Sheer Love has 8, Amos Youth Center has 12. And for both programs, they traditionally close at 5 o'clock, and they're having to close at 6 or 7 and have volunteers stay late because the students really want to get that extra time on the program.
I wanted to make sure that everyone here knows how to, if you want to reach out to us and start a pilot, the way our pilots work is they run for 3 months. We first have a training session for 30 to 40 minutes with you, where Drew or Haneen trains you, and then you get a license, and you can put as many students as you think you can handle in a pilot. We don't limit you. Start small, keep adding more and more students, children or adults. And then over a 3-month period, we have WhatsApp groups that you create, and you can track their progress. And at the end of 3 months, our LMS has an incredible amount of reports. You'll be able to see how much each student has gained in reading and math and in writing, what their sub-scores are. Do they understand letter sounds? Do they understand vocabulary, grammar? Time on task, what devices they used, everything. So anyone who's interested in a pilot, Drew and Haneen, you can put your contact info in the chat. You can also go to learningupgrade.com and fill out our pilot form. But if you do that, make sure that you mention that you're with Little Big Fund, because what we're going to be doing is tracking all the Little Big Fund pilots together, so that Abhinav can have his own dashboard of data and can track all the schools centrally. And we can also, because I think the data is everything. When you're going for funding, if you can show how your students have improved in a very short period of time, if you can show the impact, the time on task. And so any of you can look in the chat right now and send an email to Drew or Haneen that you want to start a pilot. We'll send you a license by email, and then we can have a short training session, get you going, and then start the 3 months. It's very simple. We're not talking about anything difficult. If you can make a list of students, in a document, just all their names and their phone numbers, boom, that's about it. And then we can get you started. Drew also put the pilot link on there. Make sure you mention Little Big Fund in the description, in the info at the bottom, so that we track you, and we can get started. Any other thoughts on getting started with a pilot, Drew or Haneen?
I think you covered it. It's as simple as that. If you have a group of individuals that you already serve in your community and you know that this would be beneficial for them, we provide this free pilot on purpose so that you can bring in as many different types of people that you work with and test out what the program looks like with each of them. And we'll be with you every step of the way. So there's never a moment where, you're off on your own trying to figure out how Learning Upgrade works. We're always available for you whenever you need our help.
That is so helpful. John, I don't know if you're able to come off mute, but I know we had a chat. He actually joined quite early in the 30 minutes before the session. We had a chat. He was very excited. And John, I know you work with a very specific group that, with a community in a refugee settlement. And I think a lot of the pilot that, or not just the pilot, but the case study that Haneen was referring to kind of feels relatable to that community. John, do you want to come off mute? Maybe you could take a few minutes to tell us about the work that you're doing and potentially seeing how this might relate to your community.
Yeah, Abhinav, you were mentioning, or you were referring to the rescuing deployment
Yes.
in Kenya, right? With the
Mhm.
Kakuma refugee settlement. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was very interesting for us because the organization was already serving that community, and so they brought in some folks who live in the camp, and they're now Learning Upgrade students. John, are you there? Can you hear us?
Let's see.
No pressure.
Internet access, which I know we talked about earlier, is one of the things that we've seen. A lot of our programs have been on Zoom, which feels like kind of the highest level of internet accessibility requirement. And last year we ran a program, but it was also just on WhatsApp. I found it really cool that you actually have this WhatsApp group on the side to measure progress, because we ended up moving the entire course was moved to WhatsApp because it was so difficult it was for a specific group of participants who, whether it's because of rain, whether it's just load shedding or electricity limitations, there's a lot of restrictions, which makes it really difficult for people to log on. But yeah, John, no worries if we're not able to join. I know we still have a little bit more time, so if folks have questions, this is probably a great time to ask questions about the pilot and potentially joining it as well.
Sarah, I was curious about, as a follow-up to your question, do you find that in Venezuela there is difficulty getting connected to some type of either, Wi-Fi or mobile data? Is it difficult for people in Venezuela?
Yeah, well, I actually was asking that question because, well, just to give a little bit of context, the organization we work with 2 different communities here in Venezuela. We have over 300 students from children to adults, but they are in remote communities. So they do have access to internet, but it's not stable. So, I mean, I know that they would be able to download the app, but maybe in one of the communities, sometimes they don't have electricity for about a couple of days. But yeah, I mean, I think that it would still be a great tool for us to use Learning Upgrade. But yeah, maybe the part of the connection would be like a bit of a challenge, but I know that, I mean, it's not the best connection, but if they have like a stable connection, it would be good.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense because as we were saying, every deployment looks so different. So it's so interesting to hear in Venezuela, like what are the challenges that the people would face with connectivity issues. That makes sense. We see the same thing in many of our deployments in mostly Africa, where the more rural you get, the less access you have and the less, cell phone towers exist. So sometimes some communities are like, it's not the right timing for us, but others will still, use it as much as they possibly can in those windows where the connectivity is available.
And I think that's the value of the pilot, is to try something. There's no, why not experiment? So a lot of our pilots will try 3 or 4 different sites, or 3 or 4, try children and adults, try a computer lab situation, try an all remote situation, just to see what works, and you quickly find out where it's going to really resonate, where you can get a lot of the other thing that we find is sometimes people are so motivated to learn once they do a few lessons that they become creative on finding Wi-Fi, or all of a sudden people who didn't have a smartphone suddenly have a smartphone. So, things happen.
And even in the case of Liberia, Orange, the telecom company that we're now partnered with, they had an incentive to partner with us because we were able to tell them, hey, this community way out here tells us they don't have Orange cell reception. Like maybe you should think about expanding here, and then you expand your customer base there as well. So they have an incentive. So we could even, you never know what we could create in Venezuela as well in that sense, some partnerships.
Yeah, no, that definitely would be awesome. And I know that our students, like, for example, some of them have used Duolingo before, and these kind of like technological tools, they are always very motivated to use them. So yeah, that would definitely be very exciting.
Awesome. Okay, well, you can email us and we'll help.
Yeah, I definitely
Yes,
will.
Abby,
Oh.
I think John's here as well. Yeah, I just, one thing on Sarah's work and the work that Even is doing is focused on English literacy and connecting it to tourism. So I think it's a really great fit for sure. John, thanks for being here. Yes, if you want to tell us a bit more about your work and potentially seeing the potential with this, great to see you as well. Yeah, off to you, John.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've been following and taking some few notes about the work, about the e-learning upgrade. I've personally been a teacher of mathematics, and I'm very much interested. I was seeing the calculations, and I was seeing they are very, very awesome. We work with young people, Global Soccer Academy in Changwala Refugee Settlement, whereby we have worked with most kids below 17 years of age, and those 18 years are transited to the senior team. However, I find this program
John, you're
accommodating.
Oh, I think your internet might be cutting off a little bit. Maybe we try without the video for a minute.
Okay.
It was nice to see your face. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So I think, can you hear me now? Can you hear?
I think so. Yeah, can you?
Hello?
I think it might be better. Yes. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, yes. So, yeah, so I was saying the program can be very nice to our kids because it suits them, and I see it's the grade of our young children this side. So I don't know how we could work on the pilot study and partner, and we see how our kids can benefit, having the fact that now they are in holiday. We can start the pilot study. Yeah. So I don't know if there's some guidance for us to start implementing the study, if there are some work plan or guideline that you can follow to implement, because now most of the kids are home and we're going to have enough time with them. So it's really a program that has come for the right time when our kids are available at the team. Yeah.
Perfect, yes. So it's as simple as you can email either Drew or I or both of us. We put our email in the meeting chat. And once you email us, we'll get your pilot started for you and we'll set up a meeting with you to give you some more information about how the pilot works. And then we'll ask you questions about how you would like to set up your group. So it's as simple as you say yes, we get on a call and we organize the way we want to organize the students that you work with, and then we'll send out their account information.
And I think it got cut off when he was talking a little bit about the work they do, but they have soccer teams. So they run a soccer academy called Bluebird Soccer Team, and they actually have these. It's one of the more unique ones because they provide not only soccer education but all these other skills training. So I think this becomes a beautiful match there. Maybe we have time for one last question, unless Vinod or Drew or Hanin wanted to say a few words, but maybe we can take one more question if anyone else wanted to chime in.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess we could, if you have any final words, and then I will be sure I've taken note of the emails. I realize I actually have Drew and Hanin's email as well. So I'll send a follow-up with the video to the entire community. And if you're okay with it, I'll just attach your emails as a contact next step. But yeah, Vinod, off to you for maybe some final words.
Yeah, that's perfect. So first of all, it's just fantastic meeting all of you, taking some notes on what all of you do. It's amazing work. And I started Learning Upgrade 25 years ago. I know what it's like to be a new startup organization. I've been through it all. So I feel for what all of you are doing, just keep going, and things get bigger and better, and you help more people. Our family, and all of us are family. Learning Upgrade is a small family-owned business like yours, are dedicated to helping as many people as we can for whom other things will not work, helping people that are really struggling. So all of you have a certain angle. If we can collaborate with you, help you teach people, help you have people, improve their lives, then we'd love to do it. So thank you, Abhinav, for giving this opportunity. Really amazing. And we're really looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for making the time and for offering this at such a global level. I think a lot of folks that are in this call, and I think folks that are going to be watching this video, will find it extremely crucial for a lot of the work that they've been trying to do and haven't had the resources or the opportunity to actually do, or have been doing, but not maybe at that efficient level that you're doing. And so it's going to be a wonderful collaboration. I'll reach out with an email to the group, and then I'll also reach out with any updates. If anyone has questions, I'll direct them to you all. Thank you again for making the time on this Wednesday, and really looking forward to maybe having you back and sharing some of this data. If there's a group of Little Big Fun people that are doing the pilot, it'd be great to bring you back and maybe do another learning session together. So thank you once again, and have a fantastic rest of your day. I know for folks, some of you are in the end of your day, so thanks for joining in towards the end of your day as well, and we'll look forward to seeing you all in the next learning group of Little Big Fun. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks for having us. Nice meeting everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.